The best thing I can tell you is you just need to really get educated about whatever your child's disability is. You need to be your child's best advocate. I go back to that. You can definitely rely on other people, but if you cannot identify and articulate what your child's needs is to them, you kind of limit what they can do for you as well.
Hello and welcome to the Dyslexia Mom Boss Podcast, the show that helps you not only feel empowered and knowledgeable, but confident and a boss mom in the dyslexia journey. I'm your host, Dr. Lauren. We are back with another episode, and today's episode is going to be a little bit different because we're going to be talking about advocacy. And what I'm really excited about is a parent actually requested, can you discuss other disabilities and more so comorbid disabilities and with a focus on autism? And so today's guest is an expert in this field and an advocate and a good friend of mine and colleague. So I am so excited to have another special guest on this show. So I want to introduce my friend and colleague, Michele Pitts-Brown. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dr. Lauren. Thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure to join you.
Yes. So I am really excited to delve into this content for our audience to really learn a little bit more about your journey and the work that you do, because I know most of my audience are moms, I think between the ages of 35 and 44. At least that's what Apple Analytics say. And I know that some of them are very new in their journey and they don't really know how to navigate this. So you are a woman who has worn many hats, and I just am so excited to hear or have you share who you are in the context of this space. So can you give us a little elevator pitch as to who you are and why you're here and what we're going to be talking about?
Okay, great. Oh, well, my elevator pitch is a little expansive, but I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. And that's because I do have an adult son with autism that I have advocated for. So my journey has been very long, but it's ongoing because when you have a child who is now an adult who has a disability, the journey lasts a lifetime, because when children grow up, they don't just shed their diagnosis.
Right.
Continue into adulthood, and there are many challenges along the road. I am a mother with an adult son. He is autistic and he is thriving and he works. I have had to advocate for his opportunities over the years. And so because of that, my skills have sharpened, trial and error. I have had a little help though, because I do have a nursing degree, bachelor's degree in nursing, and I'm licensed. I also have a master's degree in social work, and I am a licensed master of social work, which is a little different from an LCSW, but I have lots of advocacy and clinical experience associated with that degree and licensure. And then about 4 years ago, I went back to law school because I wanted to actually get a little legal foundation under how to advocate and what the laws are and how to go about researching so that I could become a more effective advocate. So I've worked in school settings. I've worked in hospice. I've in dialysis. I've worked in quite a few different settings, mental health. So between my professional and personal experiences, I have quite a bit of experience.
Yes, you do. You couldn't stop at nursing and counseling. You had to go get the law degree. I love it.
I didn't get the JD. I didn't sit for...
You didn't take... Yeah, okay.
I didn't take the bar exam, but it is a law degree nonetheless. And I do have the underpinnings of ethics and the laws to support me as I try to navigate advocacy work.
Yes. And I know that we'll delve a little bit into that, but I want to touch on something very important that you said that stuck out to me the most was this is a lifelong journey. And these are things that I always share with parents that I work with and I share on this show because you said it beautifully. I mean, well, kids turn into adults. They don't just shed their disability. You learn how to, first of all, get them to advocate for themselves, get them to understand their learning disability and how that might impact them. But it's really a journey for them and for you. And I just think that that's amazing that you said that, because I have had parents say to me, and I know it's because of fear, it's because of ignorance, they're not really quite sure. And they'll say, okay, well, after 50 hours of intervention, like they're good, right? After, a few hours of this service, this will go away. And it's just like, no, it doesn't go away. I don't want to say learn to deal with it, but you learn to adapt and adjust. And I know that we've had many conversations about your journey with your son. And it's just so admirable hearing all of the amazing things you've put in place for him. So I just had to comment on that.
Well, thank you. And just to expand on that, yes, it is not only a journey for your child, it's a journey as a parent. Mm-hmm. I did write a book, Embracing Your Child's Unique Abilities, and it's a practical guide for parenting children with developmental disabilities, and it has a companion journal. In that book, I talk about the journey that parents have to embark on when you find out that your child has different challenges than other kids.
Right.
Every kid has challenges, but when your child has a diagnosis such as autism, it does pose a different set of challenges that are unique. Mm-hmm. And you have to go through almost like a grieving process as you come to terms with your child may or may not go to college. Your child may or may not be included in a lot of activities that others are included in because, unfortunately, our children are discriminated against or shunned or marginalized. So you have to, as a parent, embark on that journey. So I talk about that some in my book. But when you get past that, and you have to get past it if you're going to be effective in helping your
right.
You have to pass that, and you have to identify your strengths, your weaknesses, which will then help you support your child to develop their strengths and weaknesses and to gather resources to help them thrive. And long journey for not just your child, but for you as a parent. You celebrate the gains, you celebrate the successes that they make, but then you also have to continue to help them move to the next level of their development.
Mm-hmm. And, I want to point out, because I know this was a parent request to talk more about comorbid disabilities, specifically autism. And I can say in my 12 years of being a special educator, I have worked with several autistic students. And I think what's important for people to know, and maybe, Michele, you can touch on this as well, this is a neurodiverse disability, but it is vastly different from dyslexia. And there is a wide range, as I always say. Dyslexia is a spectrum, but so is autism. I actually think back to when I was in grad school, and this goes to show how things have changed in the DSM, but like Asperger's is no longer in the DSM anymore. And I know that most people would say, oh, this person might be autistic, but they can function in life. And I think there is, how do I word it? There is a negative stigma around autistics not having a healthy, fulfilled, happy life. And I think when you talked about that grieving process, I think that that is critical, and that's hard. I mean, you use the word grieving, and most people would not think about that word in their parenting journey. But I think it's critical to address that. And I also want to talk about the intersectionality of the fact that you are a Black mother and you have a Black son. And I think that these are things that we don't talk about in our community, and we need to do better about sharing what that journey looks like.
Yes, the journey is very real. I have a daughter, and she's 2 years older than my son. And, I had set aside college funds. We were saving money and putting money away for them to go to college. And, my daughter was able to go to college and graduate. And, she does well on the professional level. And it was devastating when I actually came to the realization that for my son, not autistics fall into that category because it is a diverse population. And some autistics who do well in science and technology and, mathematics and all of that and go to college, or they might be good in the performing arts. But for my son, that just didn't work out for him. And it was a huge blow because I just assumed that both of my kids would go to college. That's just an aspect of the grieving. The other aspect is to see as kids get older and become adults, they pull away. if that child who is becoming adult is unable to keep up on a social level. So there are different layers and different stages of the grieving. But as parents, we have to work through that and push past it in order to help them thrive. And yes, again, it is a very diverse population. People would say, he doesn't look autistic.
Oh my gosh, don't you just love those
I'm
guys?
like, seriously.
Oh gosh, what does that even mean?
Well, what autistic people look like?
Not him, right?
On a scream, like, oh, you got to be kidding, right? But they say things like that. He doesn't look autistic. He does not act autistic. That is because in our heads, society has implanted this vision of all autistic people who jump or scream or who control their impulses. And although there may be some people who have difficulty doing that, some of that occurs too because our society is not set up in a way that offers environments or opportunities for neurodiverse people to come out and be integrated in a way that is not overwhelming or overstimulating. So, I mean, there's so many different facets of that. There is no one way an autistic person behaves. Or anything of that nature. And that's part of what parents have to work through too, the stigma, the stereotype. Stereotyping that goes on, the non-inclusive practices in social settings and work settings. And these are all things that we have to navigate through to advocate for our children who become adults to make sure that they have their rightful place in society to work and play just like everyone else.
And I think that's a really good transition to now focus on the advocacy part. And from my vantage point, being a special educator sitting at the IEP table, this isn't how I feel now, but I know in the midst of being in some pretty contentious IEP meetings, advocates were never the most positive person in the room, and rightfully so. And so I think that many parents might hear that as a buzzword and say, oh, I need an advocate. But they don't really know what that entails, what that looks like. I want you to answer this question first, and maybe you can use your experience. But at what point do you feel a parent needs to really seek an advocate? Let's start there.
Okay. Well, that's kind of a tricky question, and I'll tell you why. I am very concerned about parents who reach out and even retain the services and pay someone to be an advocate who is not as familiar with your child as you are. I think a lot of times parents are the best advocates that their child can have, but because of being very emotional and not being prepared, they are unable to effectively do that.
If you're a tired teacher looking for a way out of the classroom and want to turn your expertise and talents into becoming your boss, creating your flexible schedule, and building a business that serves your needs and wants, then you want to subscribe to my Tired Teacher to Teacherpreneur Mindset Monday episodes. If you want a taste of what it's like to transition out of the classroom to becoming a teacherpreneur, then join me every Monday for 15 minutes. This exclusive subscription offers a community, resources, and access to me, all for $5 a month. Put that $5 towards your morning coffee from Starbucks to good use and subscribe today. Click the link in the show notes and hang out with me and other teachers every Monday at 5 a.m. See you there.
Let me back up and say that I think that before a parent retains the services or seeks an advocate, they need to make sure that they are very much educated and aware about their child's specific disability, understand what available resources are in their area. They need to understand what they bring to the table and not underestimate their knowledge as a parent because they have raised this child, whether they have given birth to the child or adopted the child. They need to understand that, yes, I have some really good information here that can be brought to the table to the team, and we can put together a good plan. These are things that a lot of times don't happen because parents always feel that they have to give that power away to a quote unquote advocate.
Right.
I feel that parents are the best advocates. So to go back and answer that question, I feel that until you have really honed in on your skills, your knowledge, your information that you bring, you understand what your child's diagnosis is, what the resources are in the area, and that you understand your child's strengths and weaknesses. I don't think an advocate can really help your child the way you can until you bring that first.
Right. You know what? I asked that question first because I knew it was going to be a complex answer. And I know, right? I'm like setting you up. No, I'm not really setting you up. I want the parents. I want the parents to understand. So here's the thing. The reason I ask that is because of this. More than often when I take on clients, okay, by default, when I really get into the nitty gritty, I hear what parents are sharing about their child. Mm-hmm. And depending on where they are in that journey, like you said, they might be very emotional. Some might be a little in denial, but they know, oh, well, I'm supposed to find someone like you. And so when I talk about what that would look like with intervention and, all the supports and everything, the question without fail is always, so if we do like 50 hours, what do we get out of this? Are they good? Or, it's one of those questions. And I think the thing that's hard to tell parents, which is why I'm glad we're having this conversation, is this is a lifelong journey. This is not a one and done. This is not a let's put down $10,000 for 6 months and boom, my child's fixed. And I think that more than often, people will throw money at things like maybe an advocate and they don't even know what's going on. They probably know the disability, but don't know the ins and outs. Mm-hmm. And I want to say that episode 56 was with Dr. Terry Nolan, and that whole episode was talking about parents leading from where they are. Mm-hmm. She talked about parents, they need to be informed first, which is exactly what you said, but also they actually have more power than they think. Hey. And they don't need to give that away. Like, right. Your child better than anybody else at that IEP table,
To add on to that, advocates are wonderful resources. Now, as strong of an advocate as I am, there are still times when I am preparing or when I have prepared in the past to secure services for my son. I always have a sounding board. Somebody may have a legal background like I do, or a parent who has gone before me and has success. These are all allies that you can harness in addition to maybe a paid professional advocate, but are a supplement to you. You don't give away all of your control and your authority to anyone. Right. So the advocacy role is to help you make sure that you're on track, that talking points are valid, that they're tested and they're vetted. They may go with you to a meeting so that if you do become emotional, because as parents, right, emotional, and if you know that this is a really hot button topic for you, you may say, hey, I'm prepared. I have all my talking points. I've done my research, but can you go with me just to make sure if things get a little out of hand? And you can kind of, be that person that steps in a little bit and turns the dial down on the temperature. Right. So that is the role of an advocate, someone to help you vet, someone to help you do research, help you with your talking points, and then maybe accompany you to a meeting so that if things get a little heated, you have a moment to pull back and make sure that you get everything covered. Because the worst thing in the world that can happen is that you go to a meeting, you're unprepared, you're emotional, you don't have support, and then you don't accomplish all of the tasks that you set out to do in that meeting. And once the meeting breaks up and all the disciplines go their separate ways, that window of opportunity for you to have made a difference is gone. That is a big mistake sometimes that parents make if you don't go in prepared. I say it's good to be passionate about what you are, but it is best to be prepared.
Yeah, I love how you said passionate. That's what we would say in the classroom if there was a really, I don't want to say annoying child, but they wouldn't let you get the directions out and we say, we love your enthusiasm, but can you wait until we're done? I love the passion, but can we make sure? I love that. And you know what? I really want to say that I had a guest on the show a while ago who was a former school psychologist turned superintendent. And she had, I think, 3 out of the 4 of her kids had dyslexia. And she said, it didn't matter what experience I had in the classroom or what my role was. I was an emotional mother at that IEP meeting. And it's the truth, you know?
Yes, it is, because your child is your heart and you want the best for them. And when you feel like they're not getting what they deserve or being marginalized or mistreated, you get really emotional and tears can flow, voices can get raised.
Yes.
That's where the advocate can come in to help you, not to take over, but to support you and kind of pull you back in. And I always like to go into meetings with talking points, written talking points.
Yes.
Before the meeting is over, you can always circle back and you go down your checklist and you make sure that you have covered everything. Become emotional, get distracted, things really get out of control sometimes. And as I said, the meeting is concluded and you go out and you say, oh my goodness, several things that I really needed to get done did not. And then people don't always take you serious when you become emotional. They tend, oh, well, she's just emotional. She just, you can't take her serious. So it's really important if you feel like that is going to happen. And it does. It's happened to me. But I always have that support person in place.
Yeah. I remember a parent threw papers at a teacher at an IEP meeting, and really she was just upset. Her daughter was actually autistic and she was not getting her needs met. And this teacher just kind of didn't care. So the mom just lost it and threw papers at him. And we were like, meeting adjourned.
Your plan to help your child got short-circuited.
Right. I was like, oh my gosh.
You don't want to happen.
So let's shift gears. I want to pose this question because I think now that people are listening, they're probably intrigued. So how does someone go about finding the right advocate? Where are we finding people like you, Michele?
Well, the first thing I would say is start at the grassroots. It doesn't have to be rocket science. You can find support groups like, say, for autism, since we're talking about autism. Look for local support groups. Look for organizations who have subject matter experts. And I call parents subject matter experts, okay?
Right.
So you can get involved with support groups, organizations. You can ask your child's doctor, or if your child is in some type of therapy, ask the therapist, just kind of ask around. And then you can talk to people, just network and say, hey, what have been your experiences? You'd be surprised. Other parents can say, hey, I tried this, or go to this organization, or do this, or this person, call this person. They're a good resource. So that's, step number 1 is just word of mouth, asking around. And if you see a parent whose child is maybe 6 or 7 years older than yours and they're autistic, say, hey, I see your child is doing pretty well. What did you do? Or what resources are out there? So that's one. And as I said, once you start doing the grassroots, you can then do some research on the web. There are lots of resources out there. You can ask around. But the best thing I can tell you is you just need to really get educated about whatever your child's disability is. You need to be your child's best advocate. I go back to that. You can definitely rely on other people, but a person that you reach out to for help or contract to do some work to help you, if you cannot identify and articulate what your child's needs is to them, you kind of limit what they can do for you as well.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. So I don't know if there's a range for this, but typically what is the going rate for an advocate?
It depends. I mean, I've had people help me for free. I've had people help me at a cost, and it depends on the area. I mean, I'm in Virginia, so, what rates are in Virginia and what they are in New York or Connecticut, you can't really put a set rate. It depends on the person's level of expertise and experience too. So I would just say do your homework. And as I said, start at your grassroots. If you need someone who's more skilled and credentialed and professional, you just have to see what you can negotiate with them. But I would be very hesitant to put a range on anything because, everybody lives in different parts of the country and some advocates will do it for nominal cost, but it also depends on the depth and breadth of the work you need too. If it's for legal, of course, then, the cost is going to go up. If it's just more preparing a plan, getting ready for an IEP meeting, those costs may be a lot less. So it just depends on what the services are, and it depends on what part of the country you're in as well.
Right. So speaking of service and credentialed advocate, let's talk about your services, Michele. Let's talk about your services. I know you touched on your book, how people can contact you. Share all the goods with us.
Well, I have a website, michelepitts-brown.com. And on that website, I have some free material on advocacy that you can download. I have a digital book. I said, Embracing Your Child's Unique Abilities, a practical guide to parenting children with developmental disabilities. And it has a companion journal. Those are digital downloads. And then, of course, if you want to have a consultation, you can schedule a free 15-minute consultation.
I love that. So those of you who are listening, as I always say, if you're driving or folding laundry or doing your hair or whatever, be sure when you're done, go to the show notes because these links will be available so you can check out Michele's website. Your book and everything can be found on your website and Amazon, correct?
Yes, if you would like a hard copy of the book, it is available on Amazon. Now, the journal, where you can develop your own individualized plan to help your child thrive, is only available on my website. And that journal, it gives you a lot of detailed work where you can, as I said, identify your strengths and your weaknesses so you know where to get support from, how to make sure you position yourself in the best possible way to help your child. It then helps you to identify your child's strengths and weaknesses and how to make a plan to secure resources so that your child can be included in work and play.
Excellent. I love that. Michele, this has been a really fantastic conversation. Definitely a breath of fresh air. And it's nice to talk about other disabilities. And I think that it's important for us to talk about comorbid disabilities because that's the reality of some of our children. So I really appreciate your expertise, your time, and just being here on the show with us.
Well, thank you, Dr. Lauren. I appreciate the opportunity. I hope this chat was informative.
Yes, definitely. So next week, everyone, we are going to be traveling to the UK to hear about how there's a unique system in teaching our dyslexic learners. So stay tuned for next week's episode.